It's a very common topic. Every front-end developer knows. But the thing we miss is the deeper knowledge about it. Like how the Z index work. I remember I used to spend so much time layering the layouts. So you guys know what is Z index. It's basically to layer the elements on the web. Okay, so just to stack those elements below that or above that. Okay, so many properties like affect these changes. Like in the Z index, other properties affect it. Like if taking this example for the positioned elements, once you write the code, if any div and Z index does not work in static position. It only works in relative, absolute, fixed, and sticky positions. So you have to write positions to relative or absolute or fixed or sticky to make it work. So you can see this image, it clearly states that. And yeah, Z order is fine. I mean, you can, it's a simple thing. You can see the layering of these elements. This is called Z order. And yeah, this is not what it has. Yeah. So in static positioning, Z index is ignored. So you see this example, right? In this blue div and yellow div, positions are not set. So even if I try to add Z index 3 to the blue div, which is higher than the yellow div, it will not work because position is set to static. And if I try to set position other than static, like if I just add this line to any of these div, not necessarily on the board div, but any of these. If I want to make blue div appear on top of yellow and I add this line, it will automatically work. And why it does work, I will come to it at the later point. And yeah, so the third point is flex or grid layout container. Even if you doesn't uh, write the position relative or flex or anything, it will still work if the container of these children element is set to display flex or grid or inline flex. Why this happens? Yeah, we will discuss it later. That's a whole new concept. Yeah. So what is stacking context? So this is the thing uh, which was correcting these issues. So what happens is when you set the position relative or any display flex to the parent container, what happens is it creates a new stacking context. What stacking context is, it's just, you can think of it as a directory system, right? So there is a root stacking context. When you visit a website, there is a invisible root stacking context. Suppose it is a root folder. Okay. Once you get, it contains all the other subfolder. Once you get inside that root folder, you will have bunch of subfolders like this, right? And these subfolders will have a bunch of subfolders as well. And this is how stacking context works. So what creates a new stacking context? I mean, there are a bunch of lists. I'll visit this. Yeah. So there are a whole lot of property which creates a new stacking context. Suppose like it's creating a new folder each time you define these properties. So any properties you add will create new stacking context, and in that stacking context, all the children elements will have their own Z index, and it will only work in that stacking context, not other stacking context. Yeah, so this example is very common example you guys have like encountered. Consider this HTML. If we style this dot circle with a negative z index and position related, like shown in the image, the circle will disappear. So if I make the circle as z index -1, only styling the circle, not touching anything else, and I make it z index -1, notice that position is relative. If I didn't add it, z index wouldn't work. So if I do this, the circle goes behind this rectangular box. The stacking context is defined when these properties are used only. So these properties are not used in the rectangular BG, right? So this will not create any stacking context, and circle will still exist at the root stacking context. So if it exists in the root stacking context, that means it will behave with respect to that context. Uh, Mentioning any of these properties. Just mention any of these property in the style of rectangular BG, the circle will automatically come at the front. Index set to -1, it will be relative to this div, right? And consider this div as a box, suppose, okay? These are two elements. You have to arrange these two elements inside the box. How would you arrange it? You have to like put one item above that, right? And one item below that. So consider circle as a -z index, and circle is below the triangle.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah, it's basically theory of relativity, right?
Yeah,
In a bus, if you throw a ball, it will still fall in your own hands only, right? This,
yeah,
so I guess if you guys have any doubts with what Kshitij said above, it's just you can understand it from this thing. Like here,
yeah.
the rectangular BG is put at a z index of 1, right? So even if the circle is at -1, it will become a 0 because with respect to its parent, it is at 1. So it will not disappear behind the rectangle because the rectangle has a z index of 1. If the rectangular doesn't have a z index of 1, but its position is relative, then the stacking context is defined in the rectangular BG only. But the circle will still disappear behind the rectangular BG.
Stacking context using opacity. Yeah, this is a very interesting thing I found. So by default, you know how the HTML tree renders, right? So first this div renders, then inside that, this two divs render. And this triangle would be like, I think, above the
Above the
circle.
circle. Yeah.
Yeah, above the circle by default. So what if I want to make the circle appear on top of triangle without using Z index? I would just create a new stacking context of circle by using opacity. Remember, I told you like these properties create new stacking context. See, I can choose to add any of these properties and it will work. You can even add transform. Yeah, this is tough example. I think a lot of time will go
Will
into
be
it if I
waste.
start
Yeah, you
explaining
guys can go ahead
it.
and read the article.
This is like really interesting examples, and you will be surprised to get to know this. Very basic level thing, but
This
really
explain,
important.
at least the emoji will help.
Yeah,
They may
yeah,
understand. Angle is at z index 999, it will still remain behind circle, right? Observe just
yeah,
that
yeah,
one line, right? Even if triangle I have put it at z index 999, this is a common thing that happens most of the time. Like you will be designing models, pop-ups, login pop-ups,
yeah,
whatever the thing is, and you define some z index. And but even if you put it 9,000, that big number, if it still remains another pop-up, then you'd be designing incorrect user interfaces, right? So essentially, I do not want you to read into it too much, but essentially the thing that you have to understand here is the z index 9999 doesn't work because there is an evil behind in that dot polygons, which has created its own context. Are you
yeah,
getting me? Like, since it has created its own context, and this circle will still remain on top of this thing, like the shapes thing. Like if you observe in the left side, the shapes thing is the parent container, polygons is the first child, the circle is the second child. When polygons has created its own stacking context, it's like no matter how much you put triangle or square with 9999 or 2000 or million infinity or whatever, it will still stay inside the polygons only. Like, you know, it is still staying inside that prison only, like that bus only.
yeah,
It doesn't matter how speed, even if the ball goes at a lighting speed inside the bus, if the bus moves at 1 kilometer per hour, it will still stay at 1 kilometer per hour, right? So it's that stacking context thing, like the polygon is creating it.
mm.
So I'd suggest
So
like don't just listen to what Kshitij is saying, like try to implement it in the practice. Like whenever you're trying to create content, right, whenever you're typing down div, understand that whenever you're styling it as position relative or opacity zero point 0.5, then it means that in your mind you should picture that it is creating a context already. If you have
yeah,
that reading ability, then you will be able to code better user experiences. So try to that thing will not be developed unless you practice it, right? So
because now what happens is this triangle will have the stacking context of parent, like the root of all this, because no stacking context is set neither at polygons or shapes. So it will acquire the relative stacking context by default of root. So it will come at top.
let's just consider a small example. So it is in the
Yeah,
polygons. Like you said, I can make the polygons position static and hence,
yeah,
remove the stacking context of the polygons to make the
yeah,
triangle appear on the top as it should. But what is
yeah.
happening is my problem is that polygons, for some reason, I want the polygons position not to be static. Are you getting me?
Okay.
Because
Yeah,
inside the container, there are some fixed or absolute elements. I'm using left is to zero, top is to zero, to put some elements at, at those positions or whatever it is. So I cannot remove the position is to, relative. It has to be position is to relative polygons. But at the same time,
yeah.
I want the triangle to appear at the topmost thing, even above the circle, which is below it. If this
Hmm.
is the problem situation, then how should we go about it? So the only thing I think is possible is to put the circle inside the polygons, throw him in the same prison. I
Yeah,
don't see any
yeah.
other solution, right?
I mean, there isn't any solution to that, I guess. You have to
So if we,
restructure
yeah,
your HTML elements.
yeah, because when the polygons is with a position non-static, it is actually creating a static context bounding the triangle to within it.
Yeah,
So there
yeah,
is simply no way to make the triangle appear on top of an element
yeah.
that is outside the polygons thing. Okay, guys, if you have any doubts, you can go through the article. And basically, what happens at the Moondevs, guys, is every month we will be publishing two premium level articles, and there is a lot of research going on behind every article's creation, and the writer will get featured here. So if you have any ideas, you can give it a thought. You can take your time.